All right, and welcome to the Cram session for the research debate. This is we're in a precarious position because I had to wait this morning to record this because there were construction in the back. The rains have stopped, so the construction in the back. Cram sessions are, again, I post videos or in this case, or link them the morning before the speech day, the event day, and so forth. That's why we do the cram sessions. This cram session is going to go over feedback from the previous one that I covered in class, but I'll just cover it again. The cause and effect thing you have to do, and then the questions, of course. Let me just go over real quick before I go into feedback why it's called the research debate. Again, these are things I brought up in class, but I'm just going over it with you now. Why is it called the research debate? The reason why it's called the research debate is because this is the starting point for argumentation when you get questions from people. Every time you've had a argument with somebody, there's always a question comes up. Didn't you say the other day, what about this? There's always, in any kind of argument, there's going to be some questioning. So that's why this is the introduction to taking questions. The next debate is going to be the overall argument, where you're going to actually debate somebody. But this is the introductory assignment to argumentation, right? The first one, persuasion speech. Every argument's a persuasion. This one is being knowledgeable of what you're talking about, so much so that you can answer questions. Research, and it's a debate because you debate your questionnaire. You don't debate them, but I gotta put debate in the title. All right. So, anyways, I can't call it research speech. No, it's an argumentation debate class. All right. Anyways, let's get started. Let's go over first off on feedback, and just real quick, what feedback means and so forth in this situation. In your last speech, you had to do a problem solution, and the first thing I just wanted to point out is anytime I said like you didn't have a real solution or you didn't cover the problems or so forth, overall those types of things means you didn't really follow the directions or the guidance for the thing. So if you got any questions on that stuff, that is something. For this one, you're not doing a problem solution, obviously, but you still have to follow the guidelines, the requirements, and so forth for this speech. So if you got minus points on that feedback, double check the instructions. You can go check the topic sign up in discussions. You can go to the assignment pages for the outline and the speech itself. You can look at the syllabus because, of course, the syllabus is gold. It's the contract. So any kind of thing where I got you on doing a problem solution stuff, persuasion and things like that, that means you have to make sure you follow the directions. The other big thing from your first event, your project, the persuasion speech, is you had to follow a structure because every argument you get into is a setup. We've talked about it extensively you've been in arguments where everyone's all over the place, and you guys kind of like what your background too much. Anyways, but you need to be aware that this stuff can take you into different tangents and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why you have the same outline for every single event, every single project, because you need to know that there's consistency in setting up your arguments, right? And so you learn the basic one with the outline. So if I'd said anything like transitions or directions, it's essentially you're leading someone through an argument by saying, hey, I just talked about this, let's talk about that. The intro sections, if you didn't cover them like you were instructed to do, every time you get into an argument, you need to define the terms and so forth. It's a setup. And same thing with this. The setup is those intro sections where you explain credibility, your thesis, and so forth. And then finally, your points. If you didn't do transitions or you were just listing off information without any context or elaboration or explanation, you might have got a merge, which is when we know there's two distinct things, like there's two main points there, but it's so, you know, not clear, kind of put together like that, right? That's the merge comment. And the worst one is the got lost comment, which is there was no distinction at all. And it just seemed like everything was put together. And that was done because you weren't clear on maybe sections, or you weren't you really didn't have any structure in your main points. So those are the big two right there. Follow the directions, and so forth, as stated for the project. And then the other big one is there's a structure there, and you got to follow the structure in it. And that's very important. And lastly, the time, if you got time, dinged on time, elaboration, or maybe and so forth. The biggest ding, because I should say not the biggest thing, but the one that is most consistent with all students is reading off the speech. Even if your camera was off, I would know you're reading off a speech, because the fact of the matter is, when you read off a speech, your voice gives it away, not your eyes. But your eyes do confirm it, but your voice. So just FYI, if it sounds like you're reading off a book, then I'm going to pick it up no matter if your camera is on or not, or and so forth. The same thing if this is done in person. All right. When I recorded this was for online class. If it's in person, yeah, don't read off your speech. All right. All right, let's go into cause and effect, what we're doing for this one. Cause and effect. So the first project, the persuasion, was about changing behavior. You have a solution to a problem. This one is about changing your minds. And specifically, you're telling people that there is a problem out there, an ill, an effect. Most of the time, people choose problems. You could do a benefit. Benefits are a little bit harder, but there's a social thing that is occurring, right? Something in society. And that's the effect. That's in main point 3. And in main point 1 and 2, you're explaining how we got to that effect, the causes for that effect. Now, and that is where the cause and effect comes in. You're trying to change people's minds. That is why you need to choose a topic that has some revelation to it. Something where you're not just saying the obvious. Like if we said in class, the example I had was neglected kids. Neglected kids, you're going to end up getting into trouble, either bad grades, discipline issues, and so forth. If kids are neglected at home, or health issues, right? That's another. They're going to get in trouble. They're health issues. If they're having troubles at home, they're neglected at home, they're having no one taking care of them, and so forth, it's going to end up. We already know this. We already know that this is going to happen. But when you're like talking about the effect of troubled kids, maybe there's something new to it, like social media. That's new. Neglect of kids, that's been going on for generations, right? What you're talking, maybe social media and so forth. And so that is the cause and effect. So here is the trusty whiteboard that I use for my online classes. It breaks down just like problem, solution, cause, effect. I'll say this again, cause, effect. That's the simple setup. And each of these, by the way, the cause, you're going to define it in the main point summary, right? The main point summary is where, and the effect is in the summary. And then your subpoints, here, let me get another color, will kind of explain those things. So like some of you might have got used MP structure as feedback. So if you're saying the cause of like the neglected kids, for example, neglected kids is the effect. If you're saying the cause up here and one of them is social media, like the social media, then you maybe talk about, maybe the, subpoint A, explain the issue, your reasoning, and so forth. And subpoint B, maybe give examples. This is where you make a reference and say, hey, this is the study, according to the New England Journal of Medicine, a study has shown that social media use dictates kids' free time now, right? And then here, this cause here would be like parent neglect. So this is something old, parent neglect, but in this case, it's in relation to social media. Parents not monitoring the situation. And I always bring this up because I remember a student at a middle school years ago who spent the whole day at school asleep because parents didn't neglected the kid at home. This student, by the way, long-term graduated adult now, so some time ago, but didn't monitor and play video games. So play the whole night, would play video games until 6 o'clock, until having to get ready for school, and the sleep time for the student was in the classroom. Neglect. Current situation, neglect with video games, neglect with media. Again, same thing. Good, simple structure. Summary, what you're going to talk about. The setup is, explanation, definitions, and so forth. And then I always say the examples, use your reasoning on subpoint A and then use your examples. That's the simple, basic one. You don't have to get fancy. Then the same thing effect. And then you talk about neglected, school performance, and the effects one, you might do two subpoint A and subpoint B being examples. Your summary is the explanation, and that you're going to preview, say, hey, this is the examples, and you have two. So that's a simple suggestion. We talked about in class. That's the simple setup. You do that. Your intro is the same. Now remember, when you wrote your outline, you were supposed to follow the outline just like you did the last time. But now you're converting it to your speech. And because you're taking questions, you got to do some consolidation. One, you wrote a conclusion for your outline, but when you actually give your speech, there's no conclusion. You're going to say, now I'm going to be taking some questions. I'll be taking some questions. And again, reminder, the people asking questions are going to be assigned to you, so don't worry about it. So no conclusion. And then the other thing I told you to cut back on time is consolidate the audience relevance, and speaker credibility until, like, instead of like 4 sentences, you just do 2 basic sentences, like, hey, you need to know about this because kids are our future. And then I know about this because I've done a lot of research. Just consolidate audience relevance and speaker credibility. That's it. So that's how you consolidate for time. So that's essentially it. Your points, I already went over them, but let me go over the thesis real quick again. Remember when we started at the very beginning, your thesis is not like your thesis in English classes. It's all encompassing and goes over all these things. Here, I teach your thesis should be a direct statement, like a cross between a slogan and that in between that's a television slogan and the English thesis. In between, a direct statement with no ands, no commas, no ors. And this one is actually one of the easiest ones to do, where you're essentially saying, here are some causes that lead to, I'm going to explain how these causes lead to this effect. This cause is creating this effect. That's all you're doing. That's your direct statement. This, and then blank causes goes into this and leads into this blank effect. Do you understand? I say blank because you can interject whatever your topic is. So that's it. That's all you're doing. A direct statement. You're not saying you're going to change the world or that you're going to tell them all the different things about stuff. You're just going to say a simple direct statement that's saying these current issues are creating this current problem, or these current things are creating this big social benefit, right? Causes lead into effect. The same thing with your thesis. Just a reminder, everybody, if you have questions, today I'm repeatedly checking Canvas and so forth, especially for people turning in their outlines late. Last but not least is the question. That was the last thing we covered in our classes, but I'll cover it again. The questions are at the end, and the way the questions are done is 3 students before you give your speech are selected, and each of them is going to have a main point, 1, 2, and 3. And they're going to ask you a question from one of your main points. Sorry. They're going to ask you a question from one of your main points, main point 1, main point 2, or main point 3. And you're going to need to answer them. Now, we've already went over the rules. The questions can't be diabolical. They can't be, trying to get you or anything like that, but they could be inquisitive. They could be clarification type questions or so forth. They got to be respectful, but they could be a little bit argumentative. But they're not trying to create a fight. We understand? So that's essentially the questions. But you as a speaker, this is what you need to know as a speaker answering the questions. You need to listen to the question and answer that question, not tangents. You're not a politician running for office where you try to deflect by trying to start something new. You need to answer that question. You're not a politician. Stupid politicians. Anyways, so what you need to do is when they say the question, this is my tip for you, use those words from the question. I'll say this again, use those words from the question to answer. Like, okay, you just asked me about this. Well, I'm going to say this in the question and then give you my answer. That's how it works. Like, they'd say, how do you feel about dry erase markers? Well, when I think about dry erase markers, see how that works? You use their words for the question. Now, if you're asking questions, because if you ask something too disastrous, I might take points away. But you need to listen to their speech, all of it, pay attention for main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. And if you're assigned to main point 1, ask them a question about main point 1. You heard something, you're like, okay, I'm going to ask for a clarification, or I'm being inquisitive, or I'm going to say, hey, you said this. Have you thought about this? Right? Simple questions. You've seen it all the time. We went over a bunch of with some examples in class and so forth. For the kids, the neglected kids and social media, you can ask a question like, have they looked at the fact that schools are not really restricting cell phone use in classrooms? You're putting the blame on the parents, but okay, here's the question, how it would be done. It seems like you're blaming the parents, but have you looked into the fact that schools are not really restricting cell phone use every day? That's a question. So be respectful, use talk, don't no questions out of left field, because that indicates that you are not listening. Now, what do you need to do technically for that question sheet? Because you're going to be submitting it for points, 15 points. You need to, while they're talking, you need to write down because you can write down your question when they're making other main points, or if you're assigned the main point 3, when they're wrapping it up. Or main point 1 and main point 2 are going to ask questions first. So you're the last one to ask questions. You can, while they're talking, you can write down your question and write it down where you can be read, because you're just going to take an image, a photo of it, and send the photo in the sheet. We're going to talk about it on the speech on the event day. And then they answer your question, and then you write commentary, 2 questions minimum, 5 max, on how you felt they answered the questions. You can use terms from the book. You can use ideas and concepts from the book as well, and just talk about it and so forth. You can use their words. You can quote them. Make sure you put quotes if you quote them directly. But 2 sentence minimum, 5 max. You're going to ask 3 questions throughout the event. And 3 different speakers. It's organized. I've done this a couple times, so don't worry about it. But the most important thing for you to remember as a questioner is listen to their speech, write down your question, and have some comments about their answer, and so forth. All right. If you have any questions, so forth, you can contact me on Canvas and all that good stuff. no jackhammers, nothing going on. So we got through this. We got through this. All right. All right. If you have questions, you know how to contact me through Canvas.